Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of What the Field, a place where the environment matters. I'm Emmeline.
And I'm Chris.
And today we'll be talking about regenerative agriculture. We are joined by Alfonso, who is one of the co-founders of La Junquera, a farm of over 1,000 hectares in Murcia. And welcome, Alfonso. We're glad to have you here with us today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Alfonso, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you? What do you do? For those of us who don't know you yet.
Yeah, so my name is Alfonso. I'm 33 years old and I've been living for the last 10 years in this farm, La Junquera, that is in the southeast of Spain. It's all in the province of Murcia, but if you look in a map, the farm is where the provinces of Murcia, Granada and Almería get together. So it's in the high plains, about above 1,000 meters over sea level, and it's dry all year round and very cold in the winter and very hot in the summer. So it's not the ideal place to do agriculture, but yeah, we are managing.
So why did you choose that place then, if it's not the ideal place?
I didn't choose it. It's my family land, so
okay.
Yeah, it was there.
It was already there.
Yeah.
And how did you become an expert on regenerative agriculture?
Well, I don't know if an expert, but I think we've been experimenting a lot with all types of sustainable practices in farming. And then we found out that a lot of that was called regenerative agriculture about 6 years ago. And then we learned a lot more into that field with different experts, different courses, and visiting many other farms. And yeah, we learn things every year about how to adapt a lot of these general ideas into our specific context, because many things that they do work not just in another country or continent, but 100 kilometers away, don't necessarily work in your own farm. So yeah, we run a lot of experiments in the farm, not just the farming team, but also collaboration with the Regeneration Academy that is also established in the farm, and with a lot of the research of these students that help us out a lot in the studies they do and their conclusions to then apply back in the farm. And well, basically how we see regenerative agriculture, because I don't know if there's like an official definition about it. There's going to be, I think, a stamp, how do you call
a label.
A label, but I haven't heard of anyone being certified yet. Myself, I tried to be certified, but no one answered me yet for it. So hopefully,
I think Chris might have some insight into that because she researched it just the other day.
Yeah, we have been looking into the different labels, and we see there's some labels on, for example, Demeter agriculture, but there's not, I think, as you say, one that it's the one as we have with organic farming yet.
Yeah.
But we were going to ask you about that, like if consumers want to look for a product that it's cultivated in this type of techniques.
Yeah.
How can they find it? Yeah.
Well, I don't know the answer for other products. I know that in our case, we are selling in the farm. We have many different crops and products, so many of them are sold in bulk, and then some of them are sold in the farm. But we don't have a brand yet that we can sell the products directly to consumers. I think after today's visit, probably that will change, and hopefully soon we will be able to put them in crowd farming. But what we do is, together also with many other farmers in our area, we have an association called Albelal, in which we are about 300 farmers, or something like that. I don't know the numbers exactly because it also changes. Generally, it grows every month. And there we commit to all be certified organic, so that's like the basis. And then from then on to apply these regenerative practices. In the case of the almonds, for example, that we sell through Almendresa, that is a company that we created between a couple of the farmers that we produce almonds, then you have to meet a minimum criteria. the general thing is that you have to improve, and you have to quantify how you improve it: the water, the soil, and the biodiversity. How to do that? It depends on your farm, and it depends on the practices you do. And then we sell that with the organic certification, and we sell it as a product that has regenerative agriculture practices. And then we commit the farmers in that to reinvest back in our land part of the money of the sales back into these practices. For example, the practices we do in the fields for soil. Generally, we have quite a lot of erosion in our area, so it depends on the plot, and it depends on a couple of different circumstances, but the average is about 20 tons per hectare per year of erosion, between water erosion and wind erosion. So then we do a couple of practices, like for example building swales, that are trenches that follow the contour line, about 3 meters wide, 1 meter deep, and then that distributes the water when there's a heavy rainfall. On those trenches we also plant a lot of aromatics, we also plant bushes, we plant trees, and then at the same time we are diversifying that plot. So that is something that helps the three of them. So we help soil by reducing erosion, we help biodiversity because these trenches become biodiversity corridors, and a lot of animals use it to cross the field, also to nest, like the partridges and others, the parian birds. They use them a lot, especially the trenches that are in the grain fields, and it helps out the water a lot, because instead of just going down, then we distribute it and put them. It infiltrates better in the soil, which is the best place that it can be, and it infiltrates in the aquifer and replenishes it. And well, this is all the theory. Then some parts it works better than others, but that's one practice that we do. For example, for soil, we also apply a lot of compost. So one of the criteria for these almonds, for example, is that you have to apply compost at least every other year. A minimum. If you want to apply every year, great. If you want to apply 3 tons per hectare or 10 tons per hectare, that's up to you. Then we also need to have a ground cover at least 6 months a year. So autumn and winter, you cannot have bare soil all year round.
So what do you cover it with?
You can do a spontaneous vegetation, or you can seed a mix of legumes and grains. Depends on what you want to do, and depends on the money you can invest in it.
And what's the purpose of this? So that the water doesn't evaporate as quickly and is conserved better in the ground?
Well, for the vegetation, the ground cover, yeah, it does. Again, generally most of these practices they affect a lot of different things. The vegetation, it helps a lot with erosion indeed, because then it's not bare soil all year round. It also improves a lot biodiversity, because there's a lot of more life living there than if there's nothing. And the water, it helps a bit, and the soil, it improves, because then when you till that in, you're adding a lot of biomass in the soil. Generally, if you do it is at the end of winter, beginning of spring, and then all that, it's like green manure, so that feeds the soil. Yeah.
And so going back a little bit, I think it might be interesting for people, or even us, to know in general, even though you said earlier, I know that there's no official definition of regenerative agriculture, but if you had to come up with one based on your experience, like how would you define regenerative agriculture? And you were earlier mentioning that you apply certain practices. For someone who doesn't know what regenerative agriculture even is, maybe you could give us some example of very common regenerative practices.
Yeah, so I see regenerative agriculture as farming that is organic, for sure, like a minimum, so you don't pollute with the inputs you're applying, and that it improves with numbers, that improves for sure, not just like I think it's improving, the water, the soil, and the biodiversity in the short term, medium term, and long term. Practices that you can apply are manure, ground cover, swales, ponds, hedges and borders with different aromatics. So in our farm is very big, so we cannot do all of that at the same time. It's impossible. We don't have a budget to be able to do that. So every year we try to do a bit, and it will take us many years to. Well, I think we will never finish, but you can always improve more. It's totally endless. So, but in the last years we've built about 70 ponds. That some of them have water all year round, some of them not. So they are also helpful as silt traps, sediment traps. They're also very good for.
What are those?
Ponds, sediment traps is like for the sediments that they get trapped. We call it sediment traps. Right? It's a pond, but that instead of a pond, how you imagine it, that has water and is green around and super beautiful, is a place that it has water when you have a heavy rainfall, especially in the autumn in our case, and then it receives a lot of water, but then it is not watertight, so it infiltrates quite fast, and then you see it dry most of the time, but it does trap a lot of the sediments, a lot of the erosion, so that is also very good. We found out, thanks to the students, we received a lot of species in the area, like that's how you call sapos, I think toads, and other types of amphibious that they actually like those, some of them, more than the ponds that have water all year round, because they need it to be dry and stuff. So it's good to have all types of things, but those are some of the practices. I think we have 15 kilometers of swales, we have, I don't know how many kilometers of hedges, but every year it changes a bit, so I think we have to do a calculation again of how much we have now.
And you mentioned the students that come to La Junquera. The students that go, what are they looking for in La Junquera? Why do they come to you?
So La Junquera is a farm that I am involved in the farming part, but it hosts a couple of different projects that they use the space of the farm. They rent out a space of the farm that we collaborate with each other, but they belong to different people and they are independent, but we're all quite connected.
But
so the academy...
Is it a research center of sorts?
So it is the Regeneration Academy. It has a website. It's called regenerationacademy.org. And then that it started with a program to receive students that wanted to do research for their master thesis. And then they do research about things that we want to know. So we want to know how much sediments does these swales get, or these silt traps, how useful are they? We want to know how does actually improve the ground cover, or this and that. And then to put you an example, we had a student who was a marine biologist from the Netherlands that I asked the academy, like, are you sure, like,
this is the place?
This is the place for this person. But it was so interesting. So he did a study of all the biodiversity in the ponds we've made, and monitor it, like what is there and what does it do. And then he found out that a lot of the ponds that we've built that have water, well, some of them all the year, some of them not, then it is the breeding place for a lot of these insect species that they need the water to breed. And then when they come out, they are pollinators of the almonds we have around. So actually those insects that we didn't even know they were there, well, we didn't pay them a lot of attention, that they came when we built these ponds, they were helping us pollinate the almond trees, and therefore the trees that were near the ponds, they had a much higher production. So they were improving, helping in the profitability and productivity of those plots as well, which we never imagined.
It's like a symbiosis.
Yeah.
Because they need, I assume, trees to pollinate, and they're not full of pesticides, so that they'll die. No?
Exactly. So and we were very surprised. So a marine biologist was, I think, one of the most interesting research studies that we've had.
Yeah. So you're already seeing the results of the agriculture that you're putting into place, like in things that you didn't even imagine at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. So some things is like, we are doing this because we think, or people say that it's going to help that, but then everything is so connected. It's a bit of a cliche to say this, but it is true. It is really a lot more connected than we thought, and we do one practice thinking of helping, that is going to help the soil or the erosion of this, but we didn't realize how it affects actually a lot of other things.
It's kind of difficult, as we were saying before, for the consumer to actually know I do like this agriculture. I want my decisions to back this, but I don't have a label, a certification to prove it. But you were telling us that first of all, they're at least you made the commitment to be organic, so that's something they can look for. And then you are doing the research, and you told us that you have to have the numbers to prove it. So maybe the consumer, for now at least, has to do the numbers and the research to see where they're buying, right?
Yeah. For example, indeed, now we have we give the information of what we do to the clients. That so far, generally, for most of the almonds, they are other companies that then they sell it to consumers. And then we give them the certification of being organic, and then the rest is information that we give that then they trust that information is true, and they come generally every year to visit the farms and to see with their own eyes that what we are saying is actually happening. I think it will help when there is an official label, and then it is official and you have it. Now a lot of it is based on trust.
So your farm, as we mentioned, is located in Murcia on the border of Almeria, which is known as one of the most desertified areas in Europe. Mm-hmm. How does this affect your farming? Because you did say in the beginning that it's not ideal. Yeah. And as a follow-up question to that, we would like to know how, or could you see changes or even a reversion maybe of that desertification process thanks to your regenerative practices?
Yes.
Yes. Short and sweet.
Yeah. So we need a lot of studies and a lot of more data, because a lot is happening and it's difficult to keep track of all the changes. But so the farm, it was organic already, I don't remember the year, but I think maybe 14 years ago we changed into organic. And then to apply more regenerative practices and then be regenerative, I would say maybe since 6-7 years ago, something like that. A lot of it was with the help of this association, Albelal, that kind of built the network with all the other farmers that we were in the area interested in the same things, and started the speed of learning and applying a lot of these things increased a lot thanks to that network. And then since then we've been seeing how it is changing, but we don't have at that point we didn't do a study to see what was there before starting to apply all of these things. So I do see now that when I'm walking around, I do see a lot more biodiversity, for example. But now we are doing studies to compare the insect population, for example, in the fields that have the hedges, and for example vegetation lines between the trees that are there all the time, or the swales, and we are trying to have the other study to compare the neighboring farm, but we don't have the study of that same field 15 years ago. But we do see that it's improving, and with the water the same. We can quantify the amount of liters that we have been getting in those ponds from the runoff, which is I don't know the number now, but it's many millions of liters that with all these 70 ponds we've been trapping, and then that goes indeed infiltrates in the soil, in the aquifer. So all of that can be quantified. And the soil, we do many soil analysis every year in collaboration with a couple of different universities, especially through all of these students that come. And then we see how the soil is improving, the microbiology is improving, the organic matter content as well. And
is this type of agriculture one of the key solutions to fight desertification, or is it one in too many? Or
Well, I do this one because I believe it's the best one.
Okay.
Maybe another person will say a different thing, but I do believe it to be the best way to do it, and is the one that I connect the most. It doesn't mean that it's the best, but it's the one that I am the most connected to. There are others that I'm sure they're great, but I like this one more. Yeah.
And it's funny how you were talking about connecting with other farmers in your area, or this foundation that helped you with this. So the networking and the social part of this kind of farming, it's super important to drive a movement.
To have the exchange of experiences. So.
Yeah, totally. That's key for all of that. Also, generally, we've realized that the farmers generally they trust other farmers, not so much maybe
an academic,
not even an academic or some agronomist that you'll think he wants to sell me some product.
Or it's all just theory, and then you're like, oh, have you actually tried this before? Or are you just telling me based off some paper?
Indeed, so you trust the neighboring farm. Also, you don't trust so much a farm that is 50 kilometers away. So it's a bit different altitude, different whatever. So you trust the neighboring farm, and then many farmers, you have some front runners that are interested in experimenting a lot, and you have others that they are saying, okay, I wait, and then when I see it working in a couple of years in my neighbor, then I will start doing what worked for him. So then I don't have to make so many mistakes and failed experiments, because in our case we do a lot of experiments, and many of them, I think the majority of them failed. So we do them in small parts, and then the ones that succeed are the ones we apply in bigger amount of lands. But I think farming is generally quite a risk-averse activity. Farmers, you have already so many risks because of weather, because of a lot of factors that you want to mitigate it. So I think generally most of the farmers that I know are not super interested in adding a lot more risks to that. So they are waiting a bit to see the results, but that is really good, because in that network you have a couple of key farms and that are a bit ahead in those things, and then other farmers go to visit that. So we organize a lot of open days for farmers to come and see it, and that is helping, I think, a lot.
And I guess it's really based on tradition. Like agriculture has been here for a long time, and people are like, this has never been done before, why would this work? And you have to test it, and you have to
well, many of these things have been done before, and many of the other things, but it's just maybe combining indeed those practices and all seeing
and also probably depending on the specific climatic conditions as well of the area.
And for example, in our case, most of what we farm, I think 99% of it is rain-fed agriculture, and we have about 300 millimeters of rain a year and an evaporation rate of, I think, 1,500. So the evaporation is crazy compared with the amount of water that we have, and we have a tiny amount of irrigated parts. So the practices you can apply in one or the other are completely different. In our area that is irrigated, there we can do everything. It's amazing.
When you have water,
when you have water, you can do whatever you want. If you don't have water, that's when it gets tricky. It's slower, it's more difficult, it's more risky. But that is what we need to go more, because the things we do, we want them to be able to be applied on a large scale. I think, yes, we can regenerate 1 hectare with water very easy and very fast. But what we want to do is things that can be actually applied in the whole territory, in hundreds of thousands of hectares, and that is not so. And at the same time, you want to be able to make a living while you're restoring it, and then you keep adding things, and then it gets a bit more complex. But
speaking of adding things and also the whole water or erosion problem, Chris actually recommended a TED Talk to me. I don't know if you've heard of it, by Alan Savory, who basically is an expert also on regenerative agriculture, and he works a lot in countries that are basically already affected by climate change. He works in Africa a lot, in Asia, and he's applied livestock. And for him, the solution is basically to keep desertification, or to reverse desertification grasslands, to use livestock, so that they can basically pretend to be the wild animals that would usually live there and work the soil. But I've heard then, after following up on that TED Talk, that it's actually there's a bit of a discussion going around if livestock should really be a component of regenerative agriculture or not, if it's really that effective. Can you comment on this?
I don't have that much experience with livestock. So when I arrived to the farm, we had grains and sheep, and that it was 2 varieties of grain and 1,000 sheep, I think we had. And then I've been focused generally on the agriculture, on changing to a lot of different crops. So we changed from 2 types of grain to 6 types of grains. but we added a lot of almonds, pistachios, aromatic plants, and then in the irrigation area, the vegetables and fruit trees and apples and stuff. And then in the animal area, we were losing money in our case with the sheep every year because the costs were more than the income. What we did is now we have 20 cows. That is of a breed that was originally from the area and that is almost extinct. And we've been trying to mimic indeed what Alien Savory says and those principles. But we haven't done it very well yet because it's only 20 cows. We do it in our spare time. We don't dedicate them the time they need to be, so we are not changing them from a different plot when they need to be changed. So it is more like a hobby, and I would like at some point, hopefully in a few years, to be able to have about 100 cows and no sheep, and then those cows to be moved in a holistic grazing method like this regenerative cattle ranching method of Alien Savory. And then I think with 100 cows we can afford to hire a person, a cowboy, like to be able to move them and dedicate like at least 5 hours a day to the cows. But now it's like me, like, okay, this Wednesday I have an hour, I'm gonna change them to the other plot, and then like next day Saturday, but Saturday I cannot, so it ends up being on Monday, and then they overgraze it, and then another day is I'm not very proud of my cow management so far. I have to admit it, but I do think that I believe in that system, but I haven't proved it to work in my farm yet.
And Alfonso, we've heard a lot of arguments in favor of regenerative agriculture, but are there any against it, and are they partly right or not?
Against it? I don't know if it's that famous yet to have a lot of people against
detractors.
it. Yeah.
Or maybe in your own experience you can say, okay, this is something that makes it way harder to be a regenerative farmer.
Indeed. Well, that is one thing that it is a lot harder. So it is a lot more complicated. You have to adapt it to your farm. So it's not a closed recipe method that is you apply these fertilizers, you seed this time, and there's a lot of these practices you have to understand very well your land, where to put this pond, where to put this swale, when to seed your ground cover, when to till it, and there's a lot of trial and error, and that is something that the farmer population in Spain, I think in Europe, is quite similar. I read an article, I think last week, that it says that 65% of the Spanish farmers are going to retire before 2030.
Yeah.
So I think 65% of the farmers are not very interested in changing completely their method of farming if they are going to retire in less than 8 years. And I understand them. No, I don't think they want to change everything at the end of their professional life. So that is I think that is the difficult part. That is a lot more complex to manage it, but at the same time, it is, in my opinion, is a lot better. In our case, we've seen it how. So we've improved these things: the water, the soil, and biodiversity, and also in every project and every action that we take, we try that it has 7 impacts. So in these 3. And another 4, that is that it also improves, it has a social return and the environmental return and economic return, and that is inspiring as well to be able to be replicated on a large scale. And we've seen how that it has improved as well. When I arrived to the farm, we had 1 full-time employee, and now we have more than 10 full-time employees, and with all the projects that are around, we are more than 20 people living in the farm. So I think the social aspect has improved quite a bit. And the economic one, the farm is a lot more profitable than when it had 1,000 sheep that were losing money and just 2 types of grains that were organic, but no one would buy them for any premium price because it was varieties to feed sheep in the area. So no one wanted to pay like 10 cents extra to then give it to a sheep that was not certified organic either. And now with this diversification, we've improved it a lot, the profitability of it as well. So I'm quite happy with it.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It just thinking about the loss of biodiversity that gets worse every year. I think probably Chris knows better than me. Maybe you have the stats, but I read somewhere that more or less in the last 20 years we've lost more species than all the time before. So that we are really doing some damage, I think, as humans. And also the desertification. I mean, it's a huge problem for people, especially in drier climates. Yeah. Even without the prognosis of further temperature increases, it's already quite bad, no?
Yeah.
I mean, we're probably seeing it every day in Murcia. It really is. Like, I drove through there a while ago, and it looks like a desert in some places.
Like
There's really nothing growing there. It's
some parts. I think in our case, because of the altitude, and it's colder, so it doesn't look yet like the moon, at least our farm. Also because especially on the natural area we have, most of it was not deforested like a couple of decades ago or a few centuries ago. So we are very lucky that has preserved quite well the landscape, because the problem is that once you cut it, it's very difficult that it grows again.
Yeah.
And we are also reforesting a lot with the help of a couple of different funders. A lot of the barren hills, some of the barren hills we have. But yeah, we do see the climate change quite fast in our area. Like the winters, even though they are cold, they are a lot less cold than before. Then the spring used to be the rainiest season, and now is the autumn, then the winter, and then the spring. And we see also how strong rainfall events, you call it, like that it rains.
Yeah.
Of the 300 we have in a year, sometimes we have 120 in one day, in a few hours. And then you have to divide the rest of the water of the rainfall in the rest of the year. So, and the more that increases, the more difficult it is to do agriculture. That's also why we change a lot and diversify from only grains to these other crops that are perennials, that they have their roots in the soil all year round. So whatever rain we have, they're ready to receive it. And the grains, they rely a lot on the spring rain, and it's very risky.
But so what you were saying before, this is kind of a long-term journey, right? So people that want to dedicate a few years and then they're going to retire, it's not going to be worth it for them. Because what can you see in the first years that you start applying this? What can you see? Can you see, for example, they're saying that the first years of organic agriculture, you can see the yield going down, and maybe the prices have not gone up yet for the product that you're selling. So what would a farmer expect for the first years that he or she decides to go in this journey?
Well, I think a lot of it depends on the farmer and the farm. Yeah. So you can make as many mistakes as I made if you don't have a lot of examples around that have experience. So if you are trying a lot of stuff by yourself, then you're going to make a lot of mistakes. But then if you have a neighboring farm that has already been applying this, then it's a lot easier. Then you save many of those errors. And if someone that can advise you, hey, like I've already tried this, it for sure doesn't work, and tell you that in many things, or I've tried this and I guarantee you that it's going to work, then that will be a way to minimize that decrease in the production, and then the price. Well, indeed, you have to at least be certified organic in our case, and then with the regenerative part, what we have is that we are very lucky that our clients, they are financing our regeneration of the soil of the farm, because they are
willing to pay extra.
Yeah, and they are willing to pay a bit extra, and they are not telling you, okay, we only pay you extra when the whole land is regenerated, but but that's going to be in 50 years if we are lucky, to be fully extremely visible. Like, it is a journey that takes a long time. So with that extra, then we put it back, and then that helps. So we do see an increase in the price from the beginning, but then we have to be showing that we are indeed investing that back in the land, and that we are indeed showing results. But yeah, it's a journey.
But do you think that we could one day come to farm all of our lands regeneratively, and still, as we mentioned before, feed the world doing so?
I totally think so, and I think it depends a lot more on the type of diet than on the type of on the amount of kilos. So it is a bit of a controversial topic, but I'm not a vegetarian and I do eat meat, but I try that the meat I eat is I have it quite easy because I have it in my farm. So I have a few pigs, I have chickens, I have a few cows, and that's what we eat. But we don't feed our cows any grains or any. They just eat grass. They eat the grass that we cannot eat, or the Sparta grass that grows naturally, and then we try
their food.
Indeed, and then we're trying to do it that they eat the grass that at the same time that they are managed in a way that I haven't found out how to do it well yet, that they are also restoring that plot of grass with this holistic management. And then most of the, I think more than half of the cereals in the world are for feeding cattle. And then what was the number? I think it was something like for every 1,000 calories of meat, you need to use 5,000 calories of grains. No? So I think if we eat less meat, but the meat we eat is a good quality one from only grass-fed, but also grass-fed, not cultivated, but grass-fed from the natural areas, and managing this way, and then the food, the grains we produce are for eating, the grains or whatever other crop you have there. We could still feed, I think, 3 times the population we have now in a regenerative agriculture way. But
And is it becoming more popular in at least in Europe, regenerative agriculture, or is it something that it's still very small?
What I see is that I hear it more. So my wife is Dutch, and I go to the Netherlands every now and then, and I do see how it seems that there's more and more people talking about it in the European Union. They want to promote it more, but there's not, I think, that many examples yet. So then, at least we've seen a very big increase in attention to, for example, our farm. In a lot of people contacting us they want to learn more, they want to know more of how, what we do, how we do it. Also the government, hey, so what are those practices? Because the European Union is telling us that we have to promote more sustainable or regenerative agriculture practices, and we have no clue what they're talking about. So what are you doing? Is this what are the numbers? If we are going to subsidize making ponds or swales or ground cover or compost, how much money does that cost, and things like that. So I see there is an increasing interest, and I also see that there is an increasing amount of people practicing it, but it started from so small that even though it's growing fast, it's maybe still a
long way to go.
Minority, a small minority. Yeah.
So we're just going to invite all the skeptical farmers to come visit La Junquera.
There are other farms as well.
I'll go to Alfonso's farm.
There are also a lot of
hotel or something.
But there are super nice examples also in the area of other farms that they are also doing nice things. And in other areas of Spain as well. We do organize a few open days a year, that people can come and we show it, and that is a good way. Otherwise, we've had it a bit that we've realized that before we were everyone who wanted to come and see it, we said, just let me know when you want to come, I'm here, so I'll show it to you. But then we said, okay, now we have to shift it into these open days, because otherwise we stop being farmers and we are only tour guides.
Welcome, Sandra, for interesting things.
Yeah.
Well, Alfonso, thank you very much for joining us today. And I don't know, Chris, if you have any, I mean, probably we could sit here and talk with you for hours, but I think, So
thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
So we hope that all of you listening or watching us also enjoyed this little field trip into the world of regenerative agriculture. And until next time.